Detective Sam Carter stared at the assignment file, his expression hardening as he skimmed the details for the third time. Protection detail. Sole witness. Galactic implications. His supervisor, Commander Ellis, watched him from across the desk. "You're the best we've got, Carter. That's why I'm assigning this to you." Sam closed the file. "An alien empath, sir? Someone who can literally sense when I'm lying? That's a complication I don't need." "It's precisely what you need," Ellis countered. "Zareen is from Empiria. Her species can detect deception, which makes her testimony before the Imperial Court unimpeachable. And that makes her the most valuable target in this quadrant. And the most dangerous witness to protect," Sam muttered. He ran a hand through his short, dark hair. What exactly did she see? The assassination of 3 Imperial ambassadors on Cygnus Station. The official story claims it was a terrorist attack, but Zareen says differently. Whatever she knows has got some very powerful people very nervous. 2 hours later, Sam arrived at the secure facility where Zareen had been hidden since her rescue from Cygnus Station. The building was nondescript, a bland government structure that blended seamlessly with the surrounding architecture of Nexus City. Perfect camouflage, or it would have been, if not for the 2 black government vehicles parked outside. "Subtle," Sam remarked to Agent Keller, his assigned liaison. "We've had her here for 3 days, Keller replied, scanning his retina at the entrance. "Transport arrives tomorrow to take you both to a more secure location. You just need to keep her alive until then." The elevator descended to sublevel 3, where a maze of corridors led to a reinforced door guarded by armed officers. They nodded at Keller's credentials and stepped aside. "She doesn't like enclosed spaces," Keller warned before the door slid open. "And she doesn't trust humans. Good luck." Sam stepped into a sparsely furnished apartment. The lighting was dim, adjusted to Empyrean preferences. At first, he thought the room was empty, then he noticed the slender figure by the window, staring at the false view screen displaying a night sky that didn't exist this far underground. "Zareen?" he called softly. She turned, and Sam felt his breath catch. Her skin had a subtle blue luminescence, almost translucent. Silvery markings traced patterns along her temples and neck. But it was her eyes that held him, entirely black, like looking into the depths of space itself, with pinpricks of light that seemed to mirror distant stars. "Detective Sam Carter," she said, her voice melodic with an accent he couldn't place. "You're afraid. Not of me but of failing." Sam maintained a professional expression. "I'm here to protect you." "Yes," she replied, moving closer with an otherworldly grace. "But you don't believe you can. You think I'm already dead, and you're simply going through the motions. I don't believe in predetermination, Ms. Zareen. I believe in preparation and skill." A smile curved her lips. "Just Zareen. And you're lying, not about preparation, but about belief. You've already calculated the odds against us." Sam felt exposed in a way no human suspect had ever made him feel. "Can you read thoughts too, or just emotions?" "Only deception." She gestured to the sparse room. "These walls won't protect us. They know I'm here." "Who knows?" "The same people who orchestrated the assassination. The ones who made it look like terrorists, when it was really—" The explosion rocked the building before she could finish. Emergency lights flashed as the security system engaged. "Down!" Sam shouted, drawing his weapon as he pushed Zareen to the floor. The door to their room burst open, and he fired twice at the masked figure that appeared. "They found us," Zareen whispered against his ear. "Just as I predicted." "Then we're leaving," Sam replied, helping her up. "Stay close to me." As they moved toward the emergency exit, Sam realized this assignment had just become much more complicated than a simple protection detail. The fear in Zareen's eyes told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't just about one witness. Whatever conspiracy Zareen had uncovered reached into the highest levels of the Empire. And now they were both targets. "We need to disappear," Sam said, guiding Zareen through the maintenance tunnels beneath Nexus City. The distant wail of emergency responders echoed behind them, along with the occasional burst of weapons fire. Whoever had found them at the safe house wasn't giving up easily. Zareen moved silently beside him, her luminescent skin dimmed to barely a glow. "The people hunting us have resources beyond your comprehension, Detective. Government credentials. Military hardware. They'll track conventional transportation. Which is why we're going unconventional." Sam paused at a junction, checking the schematic on his wrist device. "Down here, we're in the blind spots between security grids. And I know someone who specializes in making people invisible." The tunnels eventually opened into the underbelly of Nexus City, a sprawling network of abandoned infrastructure and makeshift dwellings where the city's forgotten made their home. Here, among the outcasts and criminals, official credentials meant nothing. Only credits and connections mattered. "Keep your hood up," Sam instructed as they navigated through a crowded marketplace of questionable goods and services. "Your appearance is distinctive." "You mean beautiful?" Zareen asked, a hint of amusement in her voice despite their circumstances. "I mean recognizable," Sam replied, though he couldn't deny the truth in her words. Even disguised, Zareen possessed an ethereal quality that drew the eye. They arrived at a shop wedged between a synthetic drug den and a black market cybernetics dealer. The sign simply read "Vance's" in faded lettering. Sam knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. The door opened to reveal a burly man with more metal than flesh showing on his face. "Carter," he growled. "Thought you were still playing by the rules these days." "Rules just got rewritten, Vance. We need to go dark. Completely dark." Vance's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Zareen. "An Empyrean? On Nexus? Now I see why you're in trouble." He ushered them inside, locking several deadbolts behind them. 2 hours. That's how long you've got before they start sweeping the Undercity. "Then we work fast," Sam replied. Over the next hour, Vance provided them with everything they needed to vanish: falsified identity chips, untraceable credits, and clothing that would help them blend with the migrant workers that populated the industrial sectors. For Zareen, he applied a specialized nanopigment that temporarily masked her natural luminescence. "Now," Sam said once they were alone in Vance's back room, "tell me exactly what you saw at Cygnus Station. What's worth killing so many people to keep quiet?" Zareen's dark eyes studied him intently. The assassination wasn't meant to kill the ambassadors. They were collateral damage. The real target was the peace treaty they were negotiating. Between the Empire and the frontier worlds? She nodded. "The official story claims radical elements from the frontier orchestrated the attack. But I saw Imperial agents plant the explosives. I saw them receive orders from someone wearing the insignia of the Imperial War Council." Sam felt cold realization wash over him. A false flag operation. To justify military action against the frontier. "More than that," Zareen continued, moving closer until Sam could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "The War Council stands to profit enormously from continued conflict. They've invested heavily in weapons manufacturing, resource extraction on disputed worlds. An empire built on war needs enemies," Sam finished. "And peace is bad for business." "Exactly." Zareen's hand touched his arm, and Sam felt an unexpected jolt at the contact. "You believe me now?" "I can sense it." "I believe you're in danger," he admitted. "And that makes this bigger than just a protection detail. We need proof beyond my testimony. Records of the communications, financial transactions, evidence that would convince even Imperial loyalists. Vance returned before Sam could respond. Transports arranged. Freight hauler leaving for the outer districts in 20 minutes. You'll be cargo. As they prepared to leave, Sam noticed Zyrene watching him with an intensity that went beyond their current predicament. What? He asked. In my culture, we value those who face truth honestly, she said softly. Even when it frightens them. You're afraid, Detective Carter, but you haven't run. That's rare among your kind. Their journey to the freight yards passed in tense silence. Hidden inside a shipping container with dubious contents, they felt every bump and turn as the hauler made its way through Nexus City's checkpoints. When the container finally stopped moving, they waited until the sounds of activity outside faded before risking the exit. They emerged into an industrial processing facility on the city's edge. Automated machinery hummed in the background as Sam led them to their next destination, an abandoned workers' quarters overlooking the sprawling complex. We'll be safe here for now, he said, securing the perimeter with portable jammers. At least until I can contact someone I trust in the department. Do you trust anyone that much? Zyrene asked, removing her hood now that they were alone. Sam paused, considering her question. Maybe not. But we need allies. We have each other, she replied, her voice taking on a softness that caught Sam off guard. She moved toward the single window, the distant lights of the city reflecting in her dark eyes. On Imperia, we believe connections formed in danger are the strongest. When barriers fall away, we see each other's true nature. Sam found himself drawn to her side, noticing the subtle patterns that rippled beneath her skin when she was emotional. And what do you see when you look at me, Zyrene? Conviction. Doubt. Desire. She turned to face him, close enough that he could feel her breath against his skin. You want to know if you can trust me completely. You wonder if I'm manipulating your emotions with my abilities. Are you? No, she whispered. But I feel yours nonetheless. The attraction between us, it isn't one-sided. Sam didn't pull away when her fingers traced the line of his jaw. He was trained to maintain professional distance, to never become involved with someone under his protection. Yet something about Zyrene bypassed every defense he'd constructed over years of service. This complicates things, he said, even as his hand found the small of her back. Life is complicated, she replied. That doesn't mean we deny ourselves connection when we find it. The kiss, when it happened, felt inevitable, a culmination of tension and attraction that had been building since their first meeting. Her lips were softer than he'd imagined, her skin warm beneath his touch. For a moment, the conspiracy hunting them faded into the background. The moment shattered when Sam's secure communicator buzzed with an urgent alert. He pulled away reluctantly, checking the message. They've found Vance, he said grimly. We need to move. Now. As they gathered their few possessions, Sam caught Zyrene watching him with a mixture of desire and determination. Whatever was growing between them would have to wait. First, they needed to survive. The industrial sector's maze of pipes and processing units provided temporary cover as Sam and Zyrene fled their compromised hideout. Dawn was breaking over Nexus City, painting the smog-filled sky in shades of crimson and amber. They're tracking us through the security grid, Sam said, checking his wrist device as they paused in the shadow of a massive coolant tank. They've locked down all official transportation hubs within 50 kilometers. Zyrene's luminescence had begun to return as Vance's nanopigment degraded. The silver markings along her temples pulsed with anxiety. What happened to your contact? Alive, but arrested. Official charge is harboring fugitives, Sam replied grimly. Which means they've managed to classify us as criminals in the system. We need to get off planet. That's impossible without identification that can withstand Imperial scrutiny. Not impossible, a voice said from behind them. Just expensive. Sam spun around, weapon drawn, to find a tall figure leaning against a ventilation shaft. The stranger wore the practical attire of a pilot, worn leather jacket, utility pants with too many pockets, and boots that had seen better days. Most striking was the jagged scar that ran from temple to jawline, bisecting an otherwise handsome face. "Hands where I can see them," Sam ordered. The stranger complied with lazy confidence. "The name's Axel Varick. Former Imperial Intelligence, current freelance problem solver, and your only ticket off this rock." "Imperial Intelligence?" Sam kept his weapon steady. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't shoot you right now." "Because I've been tracking the same conspiracy as your Empyrean friend," Axel replied. "The War Council's false flag operation at Cygnus Station. I have a personal stake in exposing them." Zyrene stepped forward, her dark eyes focused intently on Axel. "He's not lying, Sam. Not about that. But he's hiding something." Axel smiled thinly. "We're all hiding something, aren't we? The difference is, I have a ship with a scrambled registry and enough firepower to get us through an Imperial blockade if necessary. What's your stake in this?" Sam asked, not lowering his weapon. A flash of genuine anger crossed Axel's features. "My sister was security chief on Cygnus Station. The official report listed her as killed in action during the terrorist attack. Except I know she uncovered something about the operation beforehand and tried to stop it." Zyrene's expression softened. "That's the truth." His grief is overwhelming. After a tense moment, Sam lowered his weapon. "Where's this ship of yours?" "Private landing bay in the manufacturing district. But we need to move fast, Imperial forces are expanding their search perimeter." They traveled through maintenance tunnels and service corridors, avoiding the omnipresent surveillance of Nexus City's security systems. Axel led them confidently, occasionally consulting a device that seemed to track patrol patterns. "How did you find us?" Sam asked as they navigated a particularly narrow passage. "I've been monitoring Imperial communications since the safe house attack," Axel explained. "When they found your friend Vance, I calculated your most likely escape routes." "Former intelligence, indeed," Zyrene murmured. The landing bay turned out to be little more than a converted warehouse with a retractable roof. Inside sat a ship that had clearly seen better days, a modified transport with additional armor plating and weapon mounts that definitely weren't standard issue. "Meet the Phantom," Axel said with evident pride. "She's not pretty, but she's fast and her stealth systems can fool most Imperial scanners." As they boarded, Sam noticed Zyrene hesitate at the entry ramp. "What is it?" he asked quietly. "We're putting our lives in this stranger's hands," she replied. "Are you certain we can trust him?" "No," Sam admitted. "But right now, he's offering the only way forward." The interior of the Phantom was surprisingly well maintained compared to its exterior. Axel guided them to a small command center adjacent to the cockpit, where multiple screens displayed information feeds from across the galactic network. "I've been building a case," he explained, activating a holographic display. "Financial transactions between War Council members and weapons manufacturers. Troop deployments to strategic locations near the frontier. Communication logs between known operatives." "You need my testimony to complete the picture," Zyrene said, studying the data. "Exactly. Evidence of intent combined with an eyewitness account." Axel turned to Sam. "And we need your law enforcement credentials to access the final piece, the classified security logs from Cygnus Station that were transferred to Nexus Central Archive after the attack. Those archives are more heavily guarded than the Imperial Treasury," Sam pointed out. "Which is why we're not going to break in physically," Axel replied with a grin. "We're going to use their own system against them." Over the next several hours, as the Phantom made its way through hyperspace toward a remote outpost where Axel claimed to have allies, they formulated a plan. Using Sam's credentials, altered but not erased from the system, they would create a digital tunnel into the archives. Zyrene's detailed account of the assassination would help them identify exactly which files to target. When they finally took a break, Sam found Zyrene alone in the ship's small observation bay, staring out at the streaking lights of hyperspace. "Second thoughts?" he asked, joining her. "No," she said, turning to face him. Her luminescence created a soft glow in the dimly lit space. "But I am concerned about how quickly we've allied with Axel." "We needed his help," Sam reminded her, though he shared her reservations. "There's something else," Zyrene said, moving closer until she stood directly before him. "Since we left the industrial sector, I've sensed a change in you. When we were alone, your emotions were clear to me. Now they're guarded." Sam didn't back away from her scrutiny. "A lot has happened. We're not just running anymore. We're actively pursuing a conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of the Empire." "That's not what I mean." Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. "What happened between us wasn't just circumstance or adrenaline, Sam. At least not for me." The confession hung between them, demanding acknowledgement. Sam felt the professional barriers he'd tried to reconstruct crumbling under her gaze. "Not for me either," he admitted softly. "But that's what makes it complicated. My job is to protect you." "And if I want more than protection?" she asked, her free hand moving to rest against his chest. Sam's response wasn't verbal. He closed the remaining distance between them, his lips finding hers with an intensity that surprised them both. This kiss was different from their first, deeper, more certain. Zyrene's luminescence brightened, her skin warming beneath his touch as she pressed against him. When they separated moments later, both slightly breathless, Sam kept his arms around her waist. "We should be focusing on the mission," he said, though he made no move to release her. "We are," Zyrene replied, her dark eyes reflecting the hypnotic patterns of hyperspace. "But denying this connection won't make either of us more effective." Her hand traced the line of his jaw. "On Imperia, we believe intimacy creates trust. And trust is what we need most right now." The sound of approaching footsteps forced them apart seconds before Axel appeared in the doorway. If he noticed their flushed appearance, he gave no indication. "We'll be dropping out of hyperspace in 20 minutes, he announced. "Better get ready, my contacts at the outpost aren't exactly the welcoming type." After he left, Sam turned back to Zyrene. "We'll continue this conversation later," he promised. She smiled, the silver markings on her skin pulsing gently. "I'm counting on it, detective." As they prepared for arrival, neither noticed the small communication device hidden beneath the observation bay's console, nor the signal it transmitted to an encrypted frequency that had nothing to do with Axel's supposed allies. The outpost Axel had brought them to was a hollowed-out asteroid at the edge of Imperial space, its exterior pockmarked with landing bays and communication arrays. Inside, a labyrinthine network of corridors connected living quarters, markets, and operation centers, all existing beyond the reach of Imperial law. "Welcome to Helios Point," Axel said as they disembarked. "Not the most luxurious destination in the galaxy, but there's no place safer to plot treason." Sam kept Zyrene close as they followed Axel through the crowded main concourse. The station's population was a mix of species from across the galaxy, many bearing the distinctive markings of frontier worlds. Despite their diverse appearances, they shared a common wariness, the instinctive caution of those who lived outside the Empire's protection. "Your allies?" Sam prompted as Axel led them into a secure communications facility. "Former Imperial intelligence operatives who saw through the corruption," Axel explained, entering an authorization code at a heavy door. "People who still believe in justice, if not the system meant to uphold it." Inside, they found a command center staffed by a small team focused intently on various data streams. A woman with close-cropped silver hair looked up at their arrival, her cybernetic eye whirring as it scanned them. Varric, she acknowledged. I see you found your witness. Commander Kira, Axel replied with a respectful nod. This is Zyrene of Imperia and Detective Sam Carter of Nexus Security. Kira's organic eye narrowed. A detective? That wasn't part of the plan. Plans change, Axel said smoothly. His credentials are essential for accessing the archive. After a tense moment, Kira nodded. The system is ready. We've established a secure uplink to the Nexus Central Archive through proxy servers that should mask our location. For the next several hours, they worked to penetrate the archive's defenses. Sam's credentials, while flagged, still retained enough authorization to create access pathways when combined with Kira's specialized decryption algorithms. All the while, Zyrene provided detailed descriptions of what she had witnessed at Cygnus Station, helping them target specific security footage and communication logs. There, Kira said finally, a note of triumph in her voice as encrypted files began to download. We've got it. The complete security record from Cygnus, including areas that were scrubbed from the official investigation. The footage confirmed everything Zyrene had described: Imperial agents disguised as maintenance workers planting explosive devices, communications with an encrypted source bearing War Council authorization codes, and the deliberate targeting of the ambassador's meeting chamber. This proves the assassination was an inside job, Sam said, watching the damning evidence unfold on the screens. But we need more to expose the entire conspiracy. Already working on it, Axel replied, directing their attention to another display where financial records were being compiled. These transactions show massive investments in military infrastructure by key War Council members, all made days before the Cygnus attack. Zyrene studied the evidence with growing intensity. They knew the attack would trigger military escalation. They were positioning themselves to profit from it. But there's more, Kira interjected, bringing up a diplomatic communiqué that had been classified at the highest level. The peace treaty wasn't just about ending hostilities. It included provisions for joint governance of disputed territories, territories rich in rare minerals essential for advanced weapons systems. Peace would have cut off their supply chain, Sam realized. And their profits. Exactly, Axel confirmed. They didn't just want to continue the war, they needed to. As the full scope of the conspiracy became clear, Sam noticed something odd in one of the financial records, a payment pattern that seemed familiar. He focused on the routing codes, a cold suspicion forming. Axel, he said carefully, these transfer protocols match the ones used by your ship's communication system. The room went silent. Zyrene's eyes widened, her empathic abilities confirming what Sam had already begun to suspect. You're working for them, she said, her voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. Axel's expression hardened. Not for them. With them, temporarily. He sighed, looking genuinely regretful. My sister really did die at Cygnus Station. That part was true. But what I didn't tell you was that she was loyal to the War Council. She helped coordinate the operation. Sam reached for his weapon, but Kira was faster, drawing hers and pointing it squarely at his chest. Around them, the other operatives had similarly armed themselves. We needed your testimony, Zyrene, Axel continued. And we needed to know exactly what evidence existed. You've just helped us identify every loose end that needs to be eliminated. You're going to destroy it all, Sam realized. Make sure nothing can ever be traced back to the War Council. Axel nodded. And then, regrettably, eliminate the only witness. You've been deceiving us from the beginning, Zyrene said, her luminescence flaring with emotion. Not entirely, Axel replied. The conspiracy is real. The War Council did orchestrate the attack. I just happened to be on their payroll. What happened next unfolded in seconds. Sam kicked over a nearby console, creating a momentary distraction. As Kira fired, Zyrene dove behind a data terminal, her natural luminescence suddenly flaring to blinding intensity, a defensive ability Sam hadn't known she possessed. In the confusion, Sam managed to reach his weapon and return fire, hitting one of the operatives. The extraction point. Axel shouted to Kira as they retreated toward a secondary exit. "I'll meet you there." Sam grabbed Zarene's hand, pulling her toward the main door as alarms blared throughout the facility. "We need to get back to the Phantom." "The evidence," she insisted, gesturing toward the download terminal where the data was still being compiled. Sam snatched a portable drive from the console, confirming that the critical files had transferred. "Got it. Now run." They raced through the corridors of Helios Point, now in chaos as security protocols activated. Behind them, Axel's team was in pursuit, their weapons' fire coming dangerously close. "This way," Sam directed, pulling Zareen down a maintenance shaft he'd noted during their arrival. The narrow passage led them to a lower level where smaller vessels were docked for repairs and refueling. "We can't go back to the Phantom," Zareen said as they paused to catch their breath. "They'll have it secured." "We're not going to," Sam replied, pointing toward a small courier ship with minimal security. "We're taking that." Using techniques that straddled the line between his law enforcement training and criminal expertise, Sam bypassed the courier's security systems and gained access to the cockpit. Within minutes, they were detached from the dock and accelerating away from Helios Point. "They'll pursue us," Zareen warned, strapping into the co-pilot's seat. "Counting on it," Sam replied, plotting a complex jump sequence. "But first, we need to transmit this evidence somewhere secure." Zareen looked thoughtful. "The Empyrean Embassy on Terralise. They have communication systems that even Imperial intelligence can't crack." As Sam programmed the coordinates for their hyperspace jump, Zareen reached over and placed her hand on his. "I didn't sense Axel's deception," she said quietly. "How is that possible?" "Some lies are built on foundations of truth," Sam replied. "His sister really did die." His anger was genuine. "He just directed it differently than we assumed." The courier ship shuddered as it entered hyperspace, momentarily safe from pursuit. In the sudden quiet, Sam turned to face Zareen fully. The events of the past hours had left visible marks on her, her luminescence dimmer, the silver patterns on her skin moving more slowly. "Are you hurt?" he asked, genuine concern overriding everything else. "Not physically," she answered. "But I've never experienced betrayal like this. On Imperia, deception is almost unheard of due to our abilities." Sam moved from his seat to kneel before her, taking both her hands in his. "We have the evidence. We know who's behind the conspiracy. We can still expose them." "At what cost?" she asked, her dark eyes searching his. "They control Imperial intelligence, parts of the military, the War Council itself. We're two people against an empire." "Sometimes two is enough," Sam replied, reaching up to trace the silvery markings along her temple. "Especially when one of them is an extraordinary empath who can tell truth from lies." Zareen leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. When she opened them again, there was new resolve in their depths. "Then we finish this together." What began as comfort transformed into something more urgent. Zareen pulled Sam closer, her lips finding his with desperate intensity. The adrenaline of their escape, the betrayal they'd survived, the uncertainty of their future, all of it channeled into a physical connection that neither tried to resist. They moved from the cockpit to the ship's small sleeping quarters, layers of clothing discarded as they sought the reassurance of skin against skin. Zareen's luminescence brightened with her arousal, casting ethereal patterns across the cabin as Sam explored the unfamiliar contours of her body. "Your kind doesn't mate for life," she whispered against his ear as they moved together. "But in this moment, I feel as though we could." "Maybe we're rewriting the rules," Sam replied, mesmerized by the way her skin seemed to pulse beneath his touch, responding to their shared pleasure. Their joining was like nothing Sam had experienced, Zarin's empathic abilities creating a feedback loop of sensation and emotion that blurred the boundaries between them. When release finally came, it was mutual and overwhelming, leaving them breathless and entwined in each other's arms. As they lay together afterward, the courier ship continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying them toward a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but potentially that of the entire galaxy. The evidence they carried could topple an empire, if they lived long enough to share it. "No matter what happens when we reach Terralise," Sam said softly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns along Zarin's luminescent skin, "this wasn't just about protection for me." She smiled, the silver markings on her skin pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "I know. I can sense when you're telling the truth, remember?" Their moment of peace was shattered by a proximity alarm. The ship's computer announced an incoming vessel on an intercept course, a heavily armed Imperial cruiser that had somehow tracked their hyperspace trajectory. "Axel," Sam said grimly, reaching for his discarded clothes. "He must have placed a tracker on us at Helios Point." As they rushed back to the cockpit, the certainty of their pursuers loomed like a shadow over the intimacy they had just shared. The final confrontation was approaching faster than either had anticipated. The Imperial cruiser loomed like a predator against the backdrop of space, its weapon systems locked onto their small courier ship as they dropped out of hyperspace near Terralise. Sam's hands moved rapidly over the controls, attempting evasive maneuvers that the underpowered vessel struggled to execute. "They're hailing us," Zarin announced, monitoring the communications system. Her luminescence had dimmed to its lowest level, a natural response to danger among her species. "Ignore it," Sam replied, plotting a desperate course toward Terralis's atmosphere. "It's just a distraction before they fire." As if confirming his assessment, the cruiser launched a volley of energy pulses that rocked their ship violently. Warning indicators flashed across the console as systems began to fail. "We've lost the main engine," Sam reported grimly. "And shields are down to 20%. Zarin's dark eyes remained calm despite their dire situation. "We don't need to escape. We just need to transmit the evidence." She moved to the communication array, fingers dancing across the interface as she established a secure channel to the Empyrean embassy. Sam watched in admiration as she bypassed the usual protocols, employing authentication codes that only a native Empyrean would possess. "Connection established," she announced. "Uploading data now." The upload progress indicator moved agonizingly slowly as the cruiser continued its approach. Another blast rocked their ship, sending sparks cascading from damaged circuits. 15% uploaded, Zarin reported. "Shields critical." Sam made a quick decision. "Keep the transmission going. I have an idea." He redirected what little power remained to the weapons system, not to fight, but for a different purpose. "What are you doing?" Zarin asked, not taking her eyes from the transmission progress. "Creating a distraction." Sam targeted the courier's modest weapons not at the cruiser itself, but at a nearby automated cargo transport. The shots connected, triggering the transport's emergency protocols. Instantly, distress signals flooded all channels, and nearby vessels, including Terralise orbital security, turned their attention to the developing situation. 30% uploaded, Zarin announced as the ship shuddered under another hit. "But we're losing power to the transmitter." Sam abandoned the pilot's seat to manually reroute emergency power to the communications array. As he worked, a new voice came over their comm system. "Detective Carter, this is Axel Varick. You've put up an impressive fight, but it ends now. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded." Sam didn't bother responding. Instead, he finished the power reroute and returned to Zarin's side. "How much longer?" 65%, she replied, tension evident in her voice. "But Terralise security is responding to the distress calls. They're dispatching interceptors." They won't get here in time, Sam said, watching as the cruiser moved into position to disable their remaining engines. We need a contingency plan. Zyrene looked up from the console, determination shining in her dark eyes. There is one. Empyreans have a final defensive mechanism, a psychic surge that can temporarily incapacitate any minds within close proximity. But I would need to be aboard their ship. Absolutely not, Sam protested. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself. It's not a sacrifice, she insisted. It's the only way to ensure the evidence reaches those who can use it. And... She hesitated, I need you to trust me. Their gazes locked in silent communication, and Sam felt the depth of connection they'd formed over their time together. This wasn't just about protecting a witness anymore. It was about fighting for something larger than either of them, and doing it together. 80% uploaded, the system announced. The decision was made for them when the cruiser fired again, this time with precision targeting that disabled their remaining engines. The courier ship began to drift as artificial gravity fluctuated. They're initiating docking procedures, Sam noted, checking the external sensors. We have minutes at most. Zyrene placed her hand against his cheek, her touch conveying both resolve and tenderness. Download a copy of the evidence to your personal device. If I fail, you'll need to find another way. Sam caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. We succeed together or not at all. As the upload reached 90%, they felt the shudder of the cruiser's docking mechanism connecting with their airlock. Sam gathered what weapons remained, positioning himself to defend the communication array for those crucial final moments. Upload complete, Zyrene announced just as the airlock began to cycle. The Empyrean embassy has acknowledged receipt. The inner door of the airlock slid open to reveal Axel, flanked by Imperial security forces in full tactical gear. His expression was one of resigned determination rather than triumph. You're too late, Sam declared, keeping his weapon trained on the intruders. The evidence has been transmitted. The Empyrean government now has proof of the War Council's conspiracy. One isolated government against the might of the Empire, Axel replied, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. It changes nothing. It changes everything, Zyrene countered, stepping forward. Her luminescence had begun to intensify, gathering energy for what was to come. The Empyreans will share this evidence with every world in the galaxy. The truth cannot be contained. Axel raised his weapon. Then we have nothing to lose by eliminating you both. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As the Imperial forces prepared to fire, Zyrene released the psychic surge she had been building, a wave of pure mental energy that struck everyone in the vicinity. The Imperial soldiers collapsed instantly, their minds overwhelmed by the alien power. Axel, however, remained standing, clearly equipped with some form of psychic dampening technology. His weapon discharged, the shot aimed directly at Zyrene's heart. Sam moved without thinking, placing himself in the path of the blast. The energy pulse struck him in the shoulder, sending him spinning backward. Through the haze of pain, he saw Zyrene launch herself at Axel, her luminescence flaring to blinding intensity as they grappled for control of his weapon. Summoning his remaining strength, Sam raised his own weapon and fired. The shot caught Axel in the leg, causing him to stumble. It was the opening Zyrene needed. She wrenched the weapon from his grasp and delivered a precise strike to his temple, rendering him unconscious. Sam, she cried, rushing to his side as he slumped against the bulkhead. Her hands moved expertly over his wound, applying pressure to stem the bleeding. Why did you do that? Professional hazard, he managed through gritted teeth. Protecting my witness. Despite the pain, Sam found himself mesmerized by the sight of Zyrene above him, her luminescence creating a halo effect, the silver markings on her skin moving with agitation. Even now, facing possible death, he couldn't help but think she was the most beautiful being he'd ever encountered. We need to get you medical attention, she insisted, tearing fabric from her clothing to create a makeshift bandage. Before either could say more, new voices echoed through the ship. Terralese security forces had arrived, accompanied by representatives from the Empyrean embassy. As they secured the scene and apprehended the unconscious Imperial forces, medical personnel rushed to Sam's side. "The evidence?" he asked weakly as they prepared to move him. "Safe," Zyrene assured him, her hand finding his. "The Empyrean ambassador has already begun sharing it with allied worlds and independent media outlets. The conspiracy is exposed." The next several hours passed in a blur of medical procedures and debriefings. Sam drifted in and out of consciousness as his wound was treated at a Terralese medical facility. Each time he awoke, Zyrene was there, her presence a constant reassurance. When he finally regained full awareness, he found himself in a private medical suite with Zyrene seated beside his bed. Beyond the windows, the gleaming spires of Terralis's capital city stretched toward the sky. "Welcome back," she said softly, her luminescence pulsing with evident relief. "How long was I out?" Sam asked, his voice rough from disuse. "Nearly 2 days," she replied. "The weapon Axel used was designed to be lethal. You're fortunate it only caught your shoulder." Sam attempted to sit up, wincing at the lingering pain. "The conspiracy? The War Council?" "It's over," Zyrene said, helping him adjust to a more comfortable position. "The evidence we transmitted was irrefutable. Combined with my testimony and the corroborating data from Axel's ship, it was enough to trigger investigations at the highest levels. 3 members of the War Council have already been arrested, and more will follow." "And Axel?" "In custody, facing multiple charges including treason and attempted murder," she explained. "His cooperation in exchange for leniency is enthusiastic." Sam nodded, processing everything. The mission was complete. The witness had testified. The truth had been exposed. Which left only one question that truly mattered. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "With us?" Zyrene's expression softened as she took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "I've been officially released from protective custody. I'm no longer a witness who needs protection." "Just Zyrene of Imperia," Sam said, echoing her words from their first meeting. "And you're no longer obligated to stay by my side," she continued, the silver markings on her skin betraying her emotional state despite her calm tone. "Your assignment is complete." Sam reached up with his good arm, his hand cupping her cheek. "What if I want a new assignment?" A smile bloomed across her face, her luminescence brightening in response. "Such as?" "Diplomatic liaison to Imperia, perhaps," he suggested. "I hear they value those who face truth honestly, even when it frightens them." "They do," she confirmed, leaning into his touch. "They also value those who are willing to risk everything to protect what matters. And," her voice softened, "those who understand that connections formed in danger can become something lasting in peace." As Zyrene leaned down to kiss him, Sam felt the truth of her words resonating between them. What had begun as a protection assignment had transformed into something neither of them had anticipated, a bond forged in danger and deception, but built on truth. Outside, the news continued to spread across the galaxy. The conspiracy was exposed. Justice was being served. And in a private medical suite on Terralise, 2 beings from different worlds discovered that sometimes, the greatest truth is found in the most unexpected connection. Zyrene was no longer just a witness to deception. She was a partner in truth, and whatever the future held, they would face it together.